This is what I'll say, because I do believe I need to be honest here. So I never knew about Peter Coffin until that debate, and I kind of left it as like, oh, he's clueless, and that's how my view of Peter Coffin.
Okay, well, don't worry, Dylan. You're about to be able to tell Peter Coffin to their face what you think.
Shit.
So here we go.
Oh hey, hey, Peter,
Coffin,
you're here.
Hi.
Hello there.
Hello.
How you doing?
Peter.
Good. How are you?
Good. I think this is our first time talking. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, I've actually seen some of your stuff. I liked what you do.
Aw, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so look, I just want to.
It was something last week. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble remembering what it was.
You're good.
No, it's all good.
It was something that you put in our counter argument against something else. I thought it was really good. I can't remember. I'm sorry, I can't remember it right now though.
Okay, so listen. Obviously, we've got a few people here that have got some anti-Peter Coffin takes. Okay. Now.
That's all right.
I don't want it to turn into a dogma.
More than a few people that are like that.
Sure.
Oh, Peter, could you just mute yourself on the whereby, please?
Oh, sorry.
So you're not echoing. Thank you.
There we go. Perfect.
Great.
Better?
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I think probably the best thing to do, if I throw it over to you, Peter, I'll give you like say 3 minutes just to kind of lay out your kind of thoughts on the Milo thing, and we'll go from there if that's okay.
Sure. Well, so as you can hear, exactly is when my kids are throwing stuff. So for me, the Milo thing, it's not really necessarily an example of what I would call something that I think would be like a great turnout or anything like that. What I think is that you go sort of into enemy territory, not necessarily with the object of convincing, one of the, 100 or however many people are attending, but rather ending up in a video that gets shared around, which is most likely what would have happened, in my opinion. Pardon me for not really necessarily being prepared. I had left watching the stream, so I don't really know the exact context I'm in at this point. But my thought was more along the lines of, there's not going to be a whole lot of my audience personally that really cares a lot about this thing. There's not really going to be a lot of people who listen to what I have to say, who really, really entertain any of the ideas that the skeptics, or more further, the MILO Yiannopoulos of the world really think. Now, that the reason why that matters is because it is not my platform that this was going to occur on. It was a platform that had established itself elsewhere. Milo was going to be invited to it regardless, and I would rather have, in my opinion, somebody stating leftist viewpoints rather than liberal viewpoints in resistance to this. Not necessarily from the perspective that I'm going to quote unquote win, but I like the idea that there is more counterpoints put directly in front of these people rather than through the filter of their personalities being able to create those counterpoints to present to them, like to edit or contextualize.
And just to push back on that just a little bit, like
Sure.
I think with given Milo Yiannopoulos' past and the way that he engages with politics, which is very much he's a propagandist for sure.
Well, yeah,
I think,
but we all are.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
for
the
sure.
thing.
But I think that I think we can state that Milo Yiannopoulos' particular style is particularly he, like almost like a preacher. He doesn't really talk much on substance ever. He mostly just goes for pure duck. So with that in mind, the risk to platforming him versus the
I wouldn't be
chance
platforming him, however, though it is the MythCon that would be platforming him.
You're right. I should have said legitimizing the platform, which in my mind does fall under platforming. I think we can recognize that. What's that? Oh, I mean, that's fine. But I mean, do you at least admit, recognize that there could be some risks to granting a legitimacy and granting something for
what kind of risk?
Oh, like the risk that he's able to use that to further launder his reputation and rebuild a presence online as one of the most toxic right-wing figures?
Milo Yiannopoulos is funded by the Mercers. Okay, it's not a situation in which you know, it really matters how legitimate he is in, let's say, left-wing spaces or what have you. Like he has access to people like the Mercers, to people like what's his name, Gavin McInnes, who has secured a bunch of funding, pays him for a weekly show on that nonsense network they have going. I mean, here's the thing, like, legitimacy is not something that you get from like me saying, okay, I will appear at your thing. Legitimacy is a thing that is granted via some form of power structure actually asserting itself. Like, here's the problem with, I don't have the kind of power I think that you might think that I have if you think that I legitimate something like better discourse. It's just, that's not true.
Well, I think I would just bring up that like having you know, money going towards you is not the same thing as having the social capital. And for somebody like Milo,
Sure,
whose entire campaign, like his entire, or sorry, not campaign, his entire career was sort of predicated on being like being persecuted and having these big figures that he can be openly criticized by, and then he can put the tape over his mouth and go, oh, I'm being persecuted. That's his entire brand. So to me, going on there to a very I mean, admittedly, what we seem to have come to a conclusion of is that it was a pretty small immediate outlook, but that gives him fodder for fueling his return to polite society by laundering his reputation, the very thing that got him out of the public mind in the first place. Not that that won't be possible without it, but that it certainly can contribute to it. And I think maybe you perhaps even underestimate your own influence, like in that personal ability.
well,
like,
okay, well, here I would go ahead, I'd push back on that a little bit more on account. I'm just go ahead and say, like, he's being platformed by right-wingers. He was deplatformed by right-wingers. And the people who will bring him back will be right-wingers. It won't be left-wingers. It won't be people... It won't be me making the choice to go into their territory and say, no, you guys are wrong. That will not be the thing that legitimates them. It's just, I don't understand that argument at all.
Yeah, but I think there's an argument to be made, and because I think you're right in your assessment. But I also think that there's an argument to be made that you can gain legitimacy for right-wingers by destroying left-wingers, right? By being very effective, argumentative against left-wingers.
Creates propaganda.
So yes, while I do agree, you will not directly be platforming him, and this is something that I also disagree with people who said that. I do, however, see some merit to the argument that you could potentially give sort of legitimacy within the right wing to him if you were to perform poorly.
I get that.
If I could, I actually want to ask a little bit about this, just because I don't know all the circumstances, and it'll affect my opinion on this.
Sure.
So, Peter, so originally, just to make sure I understand the circumstances, originally you set up to where you were going to be debating Milo at this event, right?
Well, my understanding was that it was some form of panel, like a panel discussion of some type. I'm sure that they would have attempted to make it more debate-like, at least, but it wasn't framed as a debate.
Okay.
And
we're gone.
Like I said, that doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't have, acted as though it was a debate. However, I would say, yeah, that's a fair. That's a fair assessment, yeah.
And then again, just from me watching on the side on Twitter, pretty much after that news came out, like everyone on Twitter just like exploded. It's like, oh my god, you're bringing back Milo. Oh my god, you're platforming Milo. Like that was essentially the response, right? And so there was a bit of time, and eventually you were like, all right, I'm gonna back out, and then Destiny replaced you. It seems. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah. I won't go into the exact reasons, but there was pressure applied to me behind the scenes that would have affected my livelihood and outside of YouTube, and I did not want to, incur that further, so to speak.
Okay, and that makes sense.
What I did,
or gone.
Yeah. So yeah, I backed out of it. However, I would say, ultimately, the result is going to, it's somebody as much as like there are things that I agree with Destiny about, of course, but from the perspective of exactly where he's coming from with his politics, he's going to ultimately sort of legitimize a lot of the same power structures that MILO Yiannopoulos works to legitimize, and I think that he's going to do that, and Destiny has a much larger audience than I do, and B, I don't think will work as hard to push back on certain things like essentialism, on certain things like I have a criticism of the market, for instance, that I know for a fact Destiny would not attempt. I generally think that I probably would have brought less attention to MILO and probably a more left-oriented counterpoint to it. Now, whether they took that fairly or not, I can't really.
I want Jangles to respond, but I also have something to.
Mooks, do you have something before? I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, it might be a bit of a topic change, so maybe we don't need to dive into it and people can get in their words first. But I think talking about whether or not we'd want Peter or Destiny. I think Peter, yeah, you are definitely obviously a lot more left than Destiny, but I think in this specific case, one of the concerns was that, well, is there even going to be any opportunity to bring up those points anyway? I mean, you said a criticism of the market, but based on the topic of this debate, I can't imagine anything remotely like that coming up. So maybe in practice, just maybe in practice, you're going to end up making the same kind of arguments Destiny does anyway.
Possibly, yeah. I acknowledge that.
Sorry, just real quick. Secondly, I think the other main concern a lot of people had, and you DM'd me about this earlier, about whether or not you'd say you'd agree with some of MILO's points on social issues or something. And I was just wondering if maybe you could elaborate on what that was about. If no one else wanted to quickly
the gentleman
on what we talked about before. So.
The gentleman who isn't here anymore,
Monkey.
He said that I agree. I have some problematic views and agree with MILO on some social stuff, and I would say that's probably not true. I can't say one way or another whether you consider my views problematic, but I definitely don't agree with MILO on some social stuff. I think that's really characterizing me in a way that either hasn't paid much attention to me personally or believes, certain things that are said about me.
So here's kind of like my concern coming in on this, right? Because as I've been growing and as I've been getting to know other content creators, right, I've also gotten to know a variety of different kinds of content creators, people who are more skilled at doing different things, right? Some people do some really awesome video essays and you're one of them. Congratulations. Some people and some people are more geared towards debate and sort of live, on the spot discussion, right? Brains are just, wired very differently, right? I could talk about some people I know personally, but I don't want to bring them into the discussion. But so the point being, right? I'm not even saying that you would necessarily make the wrong arguments. I probably agree with you, or I don't know. I'd have to sit down and think about who between you and Destiny I agree with more.
Have to have a discussion.
Yeah. But I think that there is some utility to at least. And again, this isn't saying anything negative about anyone here, but there is some utility in having someone who's more skilled or primarily does debate content doing a debate, right? That carries less risk of having the opposition, quote unquote, look good if that's one of the harms we're trying to minimize. Yeah. The deep money aside,
Yeah. No, I'm not gonna push back against. I would say that as far as debate skills, Destiny is definitely better than me. I'm not going to pretend that I am this amazing, jump into any Twitch stream and just come off amazing, totally dunk on the other person. I'm not that kind of person. I am a person. I do talk a lot. I have discussions a lot, and forgive me for being a little bit unprepared for this in any way, because I do tend to prepare things. Mm-hmm. I do actually tend to study. I had been studying MILO Yiannopoulos for several weeks. Mm-hmm. I had been getting content from the censored.tv thing. I'd identified several key points in strategy that I had.
I'll share your pain.
Use, et cetera.
Yeah. You and Jangles might share something there.
Jangles, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. His proclivity to immediately move towards flattery or trying to change the subject, those types of things. my intention is more to attempt to direct things away from debate and more towards conversation, because I think that a person like him isn't really that capable of having a conversation that is in, you know, normal person terms. And I think that he is actually a lot more far removed from the average everyday person than I think a lot of people even sort of think about. Like, I think that the main reason he's been able to gain the kind of traction that he's been able to is because he has, I think it was mentioned at some point, that he's the sort of ultimate edgy troll. And he's not even really that, but it's worked for him, so to speak. And I think that that was more the angle I intended to take. And it might have bored the crap out of some people, I'm not going to lie, but...
Right. And I suppose that the only thing I would say to that is, like, I don't doubt that you probably would have made some awesome, like, policy or, like, economic arguments, right? But I think that there's also something to be said that there are certain people where you cannot take that kind of an argument with them, right? Like, there are some people who you will spit, like, the strongest facts at, and they will just try to laugh it off, or they'll try to make, like, a bunch of ad homs, or they'll just try to, like, poke fun at you, or just, like, vaguely gesture hypocrisy at the audience, right? And that requires, like, it does require a different kind of preparation. Preparation all the same, but just a different kind of it, right? Like, I recently had a debate where that was essentially the entirety of it, right? There wasn't really too much arguing on the merits of any particular issue, just learning how to deal with, like, someone who was, like, trying to emotionally manipulate me in the audience, you know? So, like, I guess the only thing I'm trying to say is that, like, I'm not saying that you would have done bad, but, like, it, you know, the only justification I can see.
I didn't really intend to just go with, like, presenting facts. I'm entirely unprepared, so I don't have any humor that I can bring to the topic here or anything like that. But, you know, I regard things more like, again, you've seen my video essays. I don't really try to just put a dry collection of facts in front of people, and that's not really what my strategy would have been either. However, I probably would not have been the quote-unquote, you know, same kind of raucous debate that people might be accustomed to either.
I want to throw it to Jangles and then Dario.
So this was a point that was brought up like 45 minutes ago, but it's really, really relevant now. Someone brought up the idea like this is like infotainment, or otherwise the debates are primarily entertainment first. And I think that hits the nail on the head. A lot of people, very few people are going into debates going, I want to learn something new. I want to learn more about this topic.
Yeah, exactly.
Or at least that's my perception of it. You're there because you want your side to win. And I think that's perfectly fine. That's not a bad thing. That's not a bash against you as a person. I'm that person, and I don't want to bash myself because that would hurt my feelings. But there's still some utility in, even if I think we're overestimating the impact of the ideas in the debate, we are looking for our side to win and look out better. So there is something to be said for, because they've studied this in like sports teams. So when one team loses, that team's testosterone levels will drop. I know we're getting into testosterone memes, but basically saying they feel bad about it. But what they also found is that the audience, like the fans of that team, they'll also see a drop in that as well. So, like, you know, that visceral, like, oh, my team just lost, kind of feels bad.
Arguments.
I'm making the low T arguments. I'm doing the low T memes. All right. We'll talk about. Never mind. Debates are stored in the balls.
Accumulating more testosterone as I do more debates.
Wait, because this actually be the 5-head move? Like Milo's whole goal now is just to lose as many debates so he can just sell more testosterone like pills.
The ultimate marketing
scheme.
Damn, the real workaround.
Brilliant.
The real workaround.
Milo is actually feminizing the right.
True.
He's a leftist psyop.
Amazing.
Before we discovered the true motivations of all this to make all the femboys on the right, which, you know, isn't a bad thing, there is something to be said of this is entertainment, and when your side loses and it kind of makes you feel bad, you might not be as likely to go back to them. Because the internet is a big place, and you might look for your other source to be your team in the future. So I think ideas are definitely important, and ideas are part of winning debates. But, you know, sometimes it's just about like taking someone like who's this big provocative jerk, taking them down a peg. And that can be a perfectly legitimate.
You did a very good job of that, might I add, in yours, because you did get him to whine a lot. And that works, in my opinion.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I noticed, because I remember seeing on Twitter, Peter, you sort of tweeted out about Jangles gaining kind of subs and stuff, and I kind of read that as like you were highlighting that that's what people didn't want for you, right? That's the reason people were going.
I think that to some extent, a lot of people did not want me to get attention from doing something with Milo, and even if I had, gone in and done okay or a little all right, good, decent, whatever. I think I probably would have gotten some attention from people that I wouldn't have otherwise. And people, there's a certain sect of people, the people who I think it was mentioned much earlier, people who wish terminal cancer on me, who very much really don't like that kind of thing happening. Anything that is positive for Peter Coffin is negative for people who want Peter Coffin to have terminal cancer.
I think everyone on the panel can roundly
No. I don't think any of
yeah. To be clear,
yeah, I don't think any of the people on this panel agree with that kind of rhetoric.
It will not be the next debate topic.
Yikes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
has anyone
really,
got
really,
any... Oh, shit.
really, like nobody is like deserving
fuck.
of that kind of treatment, but especially not
Hello?
You, Peter.
Can you hear me?
Sorry, I interrupted you.
We hear you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you're there. I
what's
just
going on?
interrupted you.
Everything
Sorry.
all right?
Oh, we just
Did he-
dropped.
Oh,
Did you lose
God.
Chud?
Mod, you there?
Oh my god.
I blame myself.
Oh no, we
We
lost
can-
our mod.
We can keep
Am I
it going.
gone?
We can keep it going
Is
without
everything
him.
all right?
I'll take out the hippy dippy skills quick. Okay.
Go on,
everybody keep
go on,
going.
Dario.
No, yeah, I had a point actually, and like for me, because I did feel like people were treating you a bit unfairly, Peter. While I do think like in the format, I do think Destiny would do better, just because I think sort of he brings the skill set that I think is necessary. Like I don't think it would have been impossible for you to do like pretty well, like depending on like the strategy, and I would just reserve my judgment until I saw it. Right, I don't think it's fair to judge somebody preemptively, and I do.
Well,
like,
I think.
No,
Sorry.
yeah, like I was arguing here on the panel before, I do think that there is positives to gain from something like that, right? And like you said, you're not platforming him on your platform, right? You're going into enemy territory, as you yourself put, right? And like if you don't put it on your channel, if you don't put it on your Twitter or whatever, it's really limited, like what kind of like what from your audience he has to gain, right? So I don't think it's impossible for you to come out ahead in that situation. I think it would just depend, and I would hope, at least, like that's the only thing that I sort of said, that I really hope that you sort of did your research and sort of came prepared with sort of not fighting against the arguments, but fighting against Milo as a person as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that was a consideration I had.
I'll also say, just like from my arguments earlier about like, the merits of, we already just talked about it. To be clear, like the way that people treated you, absolutely abhorrent. Do not support that whatsoever. That was pretty fucking shitty. All right. I do want to make that clear so you don't get like mixed feelings or mixed signals from me.
No, I don't think anybody here would support anything like that. I think that's very below any of the arguments anybody's made here today.
Okay, cool. So, does anyone? Is there any other points on this particular topic that wanted to discuss?
Yeah. Although
go ahead.
I'm actually just saying I have work tomorrow.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I actually need to dip. But
Yeah,
thanks
no
for having me
worries.
on. It's been
No problem.
It's been good. I hope you guys have a fun, productive conversation. So yeah. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Dexy.
Nice.
It's easy. I tried.
Yeah, catch you soon. Cheers.
Bye, Muke.
Hi.
She just said Muke. She went with Muke.
Yeah. So I mean, does anyone have any sort of further?
I mean, I can just reiterate what I had said earlier before Peter was here,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is just like, my big concern is that my big concern with this particular issue and with platforming in general is I guess I often sort of put the sort of like audience transfer stuff to a second, because I feel like it's really hard to actually come to any hard truth about that. It's really, really hard to say. And the only thing we can really look at in my mind is to compare to other similar actors. So when I look at someone like Milo or like an extreme demagogue like a Rush Limbaugh figure, I look and draw comparisons to people like young Earth creationists and flat earthers and and people who use extremely emotional rhetoric often to sell sort of extreme premises. And in my mind, my big concern with this, with the particular debate that you were looking to engage with Milo, is that the platform that they were providing seemed almost designed to buy him clips that he could use to then launder his reputation, which in the big picture, when we think about what the impact of that is, might seem minor, but like Milo Yiannopoulos, like used his speeches on campuses, his appearances on TV to directly target people. Like, I mean, he outed trans people during his speeches. So I feel like that's not to say anything about anybody's actions in regard to him, just to state like what type of person we were dealing with. And I think we've all earlier on here, we all said like the situation with Milo is also kind of unique because he is a particularly unique bad actor who had a particularly spectacular downfall. But yeah, those are sort of the way that I look at it. And I do have a sort of analysis, at least the way that I approach it is like a lot of demagogues aim to manipulate discussions to be favorable to people who with existing biases, to use those to recruit and to use those to grow. So that's my big concern about platforming. I don't think that like we should never talk with anyone with like extreme opinions. In fact, I would argue against that. I think we need to be incredibly careful about it. But yeah, I just wanted to restate that because Peter wasn't here when I said that originally.
Sure.
I mean, one thing I wanted to throw in there, and this is what frustrated me about the conversation, because I was actually off Twitter, Peter, when you were going to go on and do this Milo thing, and people were sort of telling me about it in my streams. Peter's going to debate Milo. I was like, okay, what's that about? I looked into it. I did an entire stream about like deplatforming and used Milo as a case study. And it's like, despite being deplatformed from like numerous social media platforms, live events, all this other shit, literally, 20 examples of him being deplatformed. He's still here, right? He's still got a YouTube channel. Yeah. He's a particularly resilient character. Like, what? He was in $1 million worth of debt like a year ago, and here he
claimed that. Like, let's just go ahead and say, in my opinion, like the fact that the media structure and various personalities take him at his word when he makes claims like that. I don't understand why people do that. Like, we're talking about these sort of right-wing figures, which are generally like, if you search like with Jordan Peterson or whatnot, you can find connections where he's accepted funding from the Koch brothers. You can find a lot of events where they put him in front of, sympathetic ears in colleges and in that. I don't think that if a right-wing person goes on to a public platform and says, I'm in financial distress, or I am in this thing, which may garner sympathy for people who have similar views to them, I don't know that we should just take them at their word. And I think that that's ultimately what people did. I don't really think there was a lot of research done into whether or not he's actually desolate. I think that is an example actually of something that was sort of beneficial to him in regards to the left. Like, as was stated earlier, like his YouTube channel still exists. Recently, particularly, he's done a very good job of rebounding in his traffic. I don't know if that's been discussed or not, but the fact is, like, people think that he's gone. People think that he is beaten and he's, cast off into the shadows, never to return again. And the thing is that benefits him. That view of him benefits him significantly, in my opinion, because he's allowed to then operate without the kind of scrutiny that if people are actually spending their time, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of various.
Yeah, if you go to the Better Discourse conference, if you go to the MythCon page, the Better Discourse conference where he's being hosted, at an event where he was invited to alongside other big names and also me, where he is headlining probably the main panel, he still used the picture with him in the duct tape. He's still trying to put out that he's been silent.
He benefits.
Oh, like
from
across
that
his
image.
mouth. Are you serious?
That is exactly That's exactly his narrative, and that's the thing that I think that people have let it. Like, one of the big points that was brought against me was he was gone. Why can't you just let him stay gone? And the thing is he's not. He's never gone. Like, these people who have institutional connections, they aren't gone until those institutional connections are gone, which usually means the institutions themselves are the actual problem.
Well, I should say, like, I mean, I don't tend to agree with like the idea that like, oh, they're like the idea that like Milo was gone into the shadows. I mean, it's pretty clear he took a pretty major hit to his social platform.
Oh,
but,
absolutely.
The thing is though that like much like right-wing media, in fact, this is really common on Fox News, and I've done even a couple of streams on this about how they use amnesia and laundering reputations like regularly. This is something they do all the time, but they can't do that by themselves. They need they need like legitimate figures, whether it's like CNN or whatever, to make a stink so that they can make people forget about the bad stuff that happened. In the case with Milo, like the big reason, like you said it yourself, like he was canceled by the right, but the way that that those institutional figures, they can't just put him back up, because even though they like him and they think he was great at the time, obviously, like there's a lot of like on the ground distaste for his takes on, you know, the whole pedophilia stuff. And so with that in mind, like, what's that?
I also have a point to make.
Oh yeah, so like the thing I just wanted to bring up again is like, even though he has that like the institutional, like he might have that institutional backing, but he still will need he would need from other people the ability to actually launder that reputation. And in my mind, the best way to like prevent him from coming back from the shadows is to continually reassert the things that he did wrong, to continually keep those old things there so that the right can never forget that, as opposed to giving him opportunities to farm clips or make a prominent lefty figure agree with him or something like that. Those are the things that in my mind would help him launder his reputation, which is something that they're hoping for and relying on. In my mind.
There's something that I would want to say on that reputation. So if you look up, and I'm sure Peter, you can vouch for this as well. If you look up Milo Yiannopoulos, most savage moments, best moments, highlights, stuff like that, you don't see a whole lot of him like waxing soliloquy or waxing poetic. I just completely tried to sound smart and failed. You don't see him talking a whole lot about policy, because that wasn't why he got popular. I think it's pretty fair to say that it's not his ideas that got him popular, insofar as like he is like policy positions and political ideas and stuff like that. What got him popular is that he was shitting on SJWs. And you find, and this was kind of like the whole rise of like the anti-SJW and why they kind of shifted fascist towards now, because when your whole ideology is shitting on this group of people, you're willing to have strange bedfellows in order to do it. So it wasn't that he had the great ideas and brought them over with the ideas, is that he shit on these people. An audience who likes seeing those people get shit on realized it, and then they started making the ideas. They started like saying the jokes and doing the rhetoric, not because they really believed in it at first, but because it made the SJWs mad. And so when you think about that, when he comes back, they didn't like him for his ideas anyway. He's not putting forth policy positions. He's not putting forth anything. In my debate, it was like JQ stuff that we've, and standard talking, conservative talking points. These are old ideas. It's his rhetoric. So if they'll be willing to forgive the pedophilia stuff if he does what he originally did good enough, because that's why they were interested in the first place.
Well, and the other thing that I would like to put in there is that the way that things work algorithmically, and as far as how content is put forward as like quote unquote popular on all of these platforms, there is, no matter what, an incentive to have somebody opposite whoever is going to get attention. And here's the thing. If you do have institutional backing, it may not be that you go on CNN, but you're going to go somewhere, and eventually you're going to get more and more people in front of you. And whether you're going there unopposed or opposed, it does actually have a difference. And something like this Better Discourse event, I believe, is him kind of being able to go in front of, like I said, a small audience and to reassert who he is. Exactly what Jangles said, the sort of dunking on SJW stuff. and the point is to reintroduce him on the peripheral. And you might think that having a left-wing figure might help legitimize. And what I would argue is that there's kind of a market incentive to legitimize him one way or another. The left-wing the left-wing figure provides at least a counterpoint as that laundering. Like the event itself is the laundering. It's not me doing the laundering. It's the event, so to speak.
See, that's where I kind of disagree, because I feel like the audience is going to be biased anyway. They're not going to be particularly open. Like, I mean, it's possible, of course. All things are possible, but in my mind, like, this is a devoted.
Well, they're
audience.
rehabbing.
And
what I'm saying is they're rehabbing his reputation for that audience. He was canceled by the right wing. The people who had a problem with him were right-wing people, and they're putting him in front of right-wing people.
Yeah, well, like, true, but they also like his career previous to that was owning the libs, which is like I would argue that's one of the biggest things that like right-wing audiences love, is like
libs didn't always need to be there though.
What's that?
The libs didn't always need to be there for him to dunk on them.
Yeah,
in fact, it's actually really easy to dunk on somebody who you strawmans. A lot of the clips, a lot of the Savage clips and stuff, where him like talking about the strawman SJW.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Obviously, like Milo's a deeply dishonest person, but again, in the bigger picture, once you zoom out of the scope of like the actual audience that's in that room, giving Milo like an opportunity to get, I mean, obviously again, we've just said he's incredibly dishonest. He's going to clip stuff out of context. In my mind, the way to effectively ensure that he stays in the shadows and can't be laundered would be like almost to blockade him of the content he needs most to come back. Because if he doesn't own any libs, if he doesn't ride off of the coattails of that, he can't come back. The only thing that exists is everybody remembers that. In my mind, I don't think that Milo Yiannopoulos is going to be able to make a comeback unless he's able to do something spectacular, which in my mind, and keep in mind my criticisms of this particular event go to Destiny as well, who's taken the spot, because in this slightly different situation, but I still think that it's a really bad idea. And in fact, I think it might even be worse, depending. Like, I don't know. I feel like that does grant legitimacy, and the reason they're seeking those out is probably for a reason.
I kind of really disagree with sort of the well, not specifically what you're saying, but what you're kind of implying, because I think that sort of misses the point. And I think it's really important to consider that I think the reason why this event is structured the way that it did or is, and what they're trying to achieve is they don't need like the left wing, right? They don't need to convert like leftists over, right? What they're trying to do is to restore Milo's reputation with the right wing, right? That is the point. So it doesn't matter which left wing or liberal person they bring on, as long as there's somebody there to be a punching bag for Milo.
Then why do they seek out big figures, well-known figures?
Well, here's the thing: it could even not be anybody. Like, they could play a video and he could stand up and go, "Look at how stupid
I will say it is.
I was about ready to say they paid for the tickets. They paid for the tickets. They paid for the hotel room. They paid for all the meals. He's coming.
I mean, it does.
He doesn't have to talk against anybody.
But then he's talking. This is focusing entirely on the scope of the actual convention, which we've already admitted is the minority of people that are going to be affected by this potential event. In my mind, like this entire conversation has nothing to do with winning over minds. It has to do with being able to give Milo content that he can distract from his past, that he can create spectacle again, spectacle by debating a big leftist figure or whatever.
Well, he doesn't even have to do that, though. Again, they could literally play a video of, any of the greatest hits of, like, the...
Well, if that was true, why would they seek out leftist figures?
Yeah,
it's obviously better to have live, real things of a real person.
Sure, I understand that, but, like, here's the thing. You could take any clip from anything, and you could genuinely create something viral within the confines of the niche audience that we're talking about. And that's
the clip he would need?
I think... What's that?
Do you know the clip he would need to gain popularity again?
What?
Ladies and gentlemen, Milo Yiannopoulos. And the date is, 8/16/2020. That's it. That's the clip. He's back.
I agree. I entirely agree with that point.
Hold on, I think I have
to be shown that he is back, that he is doing this stuff, and it doesn't matter who is there. Now, does it matter that you know, could it potentially be like bad for me? Yes, absolutely. But let's go ahead and say this: like, the left is more than happy to disavow me at any point. I'm not exactly regarded as a quote unquote legitimate figure on the left. And if I were, I don't think that people would be spending all of their time attempting to distance themselves from me and paint me as some sort of an evil person, which is something that people do on a pretty regular basis.
To be entirely fair, like once you get to a certain point in like this sort of leftist space, like because there is a lot of division on the left, you're naturally going to be, you know, demonized by like someone on here. Like there's so many different factions on the left that just don't exist on the right. I mean, like even they like the people closer to the center will gladly, even if they don't say it explicitly, they will shake hands and walk down the street skipping with Nazis, right? If it will advance their interests. Like they do not mind. But people on the left do. I don't know if that says something good or something bad, that we're, you know, like that issue exists. I'll leave that to y'all. But But like the issue,
I think that like the intention, it comes from a good place of like trying to, you know, I don't know the word purity, but, you know, trying to make sure that everyone's, you know, doing the correct thing, so to speak. But yeah, I think that the impact is bad because we just end up cannibalizing each other and going at each other's throats all the time and dunking each other and you know, playing into the gamified mechanic to these platforms like Twitter.
I think there's a third option that we're sort of skirting by, and I think the third option here is that I think this is a mistake by them. Right, it's a mistake by them to bring somebody like Destiny on, because I think it would be better for them to just bring like somebody who could be like a punching bag and create some viral clips for Milo. Like I even think it would be a mistake for them to bring Peter on, because Peter is also somebody who has like a presence, who would be able to at least like bring some arguments, right? Like just bring some nobody who could be a punching bag. Or I think having a person there is better than having a video.
So here's the commentary I want to make.
I'm not saying
I want to. Like, I just really want to make some commentary. I think that people acknowledge that, like, yeah, if we have just like a clip of Milo saying something at an event, that's going to provide some utility. Like that will certainly, like, to an extent, you know, draw traffic to him. But I think it's also pretty hard to deny that, like, something to the effect of, and again, like, you know, we're paraphrasing here, but something to the effect of Milo Yiannopoulos destroys Peter Coffin. I spit all over my camera. Destroys Peter Coffin in one-on-one debate, right, or something to that effect, right? I mean, like, people will eat that shit. I'm not saying that that's necessarily what will happen, but like that's what I think that they're trying to go for, right? Like that's like the intended goal.
I mean, I would say that most of the time that would be the obvious desired result. But I'll say I don't know that it's. I'm not saying this to like say I am some superior debater, because I'm certainly not. But I don't know that it's as. I mean, if you again watch Jangles debate, I think that there's a vast overstatement of Milo Yiannopoulos' skill as, you know, an orator and an argument creator and or deliverer. I think he's not really as powerful as I think a lot of people maybe kind of think. Like, to use one of their terms, his power level is not really actually that high.
Could I actually hold on? I have to spin some conspiracy theory for a second. I do, because what I do not want people to do is to get to a place of complacency. Because let's be clear, Jangles, you had a debate with Milo, and that went over great, and that was all well and good, and that helped you grow. There is a substantively larger event that is just off in the distance, right? And it sounds like, and maybe this is just me realizing I'm the frog in the water, I don't know. But I want to make sure that people don't go in with this expectation that, oh, Milo is this sad whatever that appeared against Jangles, and everyone has like a super low expectation. Then he comes out and does as well as he always used to, and just completely blows people out of the fucking water. And so
that's
like,
a very good point.
Yeah. So and again, I'm not. Like, I don't want to get to like conspiracy land. But I do want to make sure that people aren't like just kind of like going in with this idea that he's going to be someone that he ends up not being, or that there's a risk of not being.
On that, like I was going to bring up an example from, and like there was a really, maybe some of you know him, a really infamous young Earth creationist named Ken Ham, who was known for being like, I mean, he's almost a joke. Like any person who's who can analyze those points. It's just like what this guy's talking about. And he would doggedly pursue debates with people like Bill Nye. I think he actually got a debate with Bill Nye. And if I remember correctly, I may be misremembering this, but I seem to recall Bill Nye expressing regret for engaging in that debate because he had no intention of engaging in good faith. He got owned, but his point is to publicize his own career, to get that voice out there to those fringe people who he might be able, again, scoop in. And that's my concern with certain voices like this, is that in the case of, to just draw a bit of a distinction between the two different types of platforms we're talking about here. In Jangles' debate, it's on a neutral platform with which pulls in a lot of people who are there specifically to hear different ideas. Like modern day debates, entire branding is based around hearing different ideas. That's not the case with the convention that we're talking about. That is very clearly designed to be set up to either get you to agree with him on some points which they can use, or perhaps to give him an opportunity to get a dunk on you, in my mind, which that I think is actually really important, because the way platforms are constructed and the fact that there's a moderator in place. I think now the moderator has changed for the conference. I don't know at this point, but at the point that
I haven't been keeping up with it personally.
Yes, it's Brandon Straka, who is not better.
Okay, so yeah, so my worry there is that the platform is designed to be favorable and to grant like favorable footage, to grant all these things that can be used as tools to publicize somebody, to reach out, much like some of these very, very successful young earth creationists did the same thing. It was go and get regularly owned, where everybody who disagrees with them would conclude that they're owned, but they were able to use that to reach out to people who would then donate to their funds and stuff. That's the thing that I get concerned about, is that that it's very hard to with certain types of demagogues, it's very hard to actually make a favorable platform where it does anything but spread their message further, and that is concerning to me.
Well, there's one thing that I would like to say in combat to that. Like, the left is not a particularly large demographic of why aren't we doing stuff like that?
I thought the radical left was in control of everything.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like,
don't we have corporate America on our side?
No, I mean, that's my point. My point is, like, if that's such a problem with them, why aren't we going in and invading their spaces? Why aren't we doing that? Like, I don't understand.
I can actually address that. Like, I think the reason is because the way that you become like extreme right wing and the way that you become extreme left wing are very different. Like right-wing audiences are like predicated on like a lot of thought terminating cliches, and you see this is especially true when you get to particular extreme, and that's not really the case in most leftist spaces. Maybe there are some fringe groups that are like that, but that's really not the case. Like, as we've talked about multiple times on this panel alone, like the left is fractured. There's like 100 different viewpoints. That's not the case. The conclusions, even though there's a bunch of different names for stuff on the right, their conclusions are all very similar, and the outcomes that they aim for and their tactics are pretty similar. And so that's why I think that we can't really do the same thing, because the way that the right propagates their message is by basically like spraying out lots and lots of very emotive stuff that's actually, if you take the time to debunk it, it's quite easy to debunk, but there's so much of it that you can never possibly get through all of it. We don't really have the ability to do that in the same way. I do think that there is room for that, but I think that where most leftists are looking to pull from and to encourage from is not from the far right, but rather from the soft right and the center, like the center and like the libs. Like, I think that's really the audience that most leftists can actually reach without very specialized approach. And I can say this from being someone who grew up in a highly indoctrinated space. It is incredibly hard to get out of that mindset, because you are trained to shut off any sort of critiques. And so for me, it took like a very personal experience of exploring philosophy on my own, having a very close friend who challenged me and stuff like that. Whereas from going from like a lib position, once I had become a lib, going from lib to left was like, oh, I'm just chasing ideas. I can go literally research whatever I want or I'm interested in. That's not how it works so much on the right. The right is it claps people's brains in these sort of thought terminating cliches a lot.
I think I kind of take issue with that a little bit because well, I mean, there's a lot to take issue with depending on like how you define things. Like, because you can even define like some liberals to be on the right, right? And then you're well, I mean, by that sense, I mean, yeah, you can bring people on the right like over to the left. It just depends on like what your like where your line is and like who you call the right. And I do think to some extent
but
that
like,
I
even said in mine, like.
Well, sure, but I think to an extent that the right is also represents a large like field of views, and sure, like the far right is very united amongst like some things, but I think especially in the U.S. But like if you look at Europe and like the way that sort of the right wing parties in like different parliaments, especially in like the Nordic countries, like they very much have like different kinds of approaches and different ideas. Sure, they come together in sort of being like the right-wing voting bloc, but they're very like different in sort of the people that they represent in the parties. And I think, I mean, I understand sort of the Americanized view, but if you look at sort of like the global right-wing, I do believe that there's like a lot of people who can be brought over by appealing to like certain things. So for example, like there are people on the right who have like more libertarian views that sometimes find themselves agreeing a lot with me, right? Because I would consider myself a left-wing libertarian. So it just depends on like how you appeal to them and like who you think, like what you're pulling on, like what their values are.
For sure, but again, you know, as I brought up before, Milo Yiannopoulos isn't an example of like a light right-wing figure. He's literally like.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I bring up like a practical matter with this? Like the far right is responsible, like in a recent study, for like over 300 deaths for like the past like 15, 20 years, and the far left is responsible for maybe one. As a practical matter, I feel much safer at left events than I do at right ones. Just as a practical matter, right?
I mean, that's I'm talking like specifically in terms of like characterizing the right wing to be
right.
Like,
but like when people ask the question like, why am I not going over to these sorts of events? It's partially motivated by safety. Like, and I hate to put it like that, but you know, it is what it is, right?
No,
like, I'm trans person,
like,
right?
It's completely true, but also again, like even in those spaces, there is not even just an intolerance of ideas. There's an intolerance of essentials. You can't be a trans person and go advocate in right-wing spaces. Like you can't. It just won't happen.
Wait, sorry, you can if you're saying the right things. You can if you're saying the right things, right? Like look at Blair White, for example.
If you completely pander, yes, absolutely. If you completely, yes, we have people like Blair Whites, for example, of course, but recognize that there is no challenge to the right wing. There's no challenge to a single right wing point. It's literally that like. Blair White exists to confirm their biases. Like this is totally different. I would
but like this exists on the left as well, right? I mean, there are some left-wing spaces. I mean, specifically.
I mean, some like yes, but not to the same degree. Yeah, but okay, but. All right.
Oh, let's. I mean,
I actually.
These are right wingers. Come on.
I want to kind of push back a little bit on the whole idea that like the right. Like what you said about, you know, a lot of the right depending on thought terminating cliches and a lot of the left not. I don't know that I entirely agree with that. I think there's a lot of people on the left who don't really investigate the left, but are aesthetically interested in what the left looks like.
Yeah,
and I think that kind of making the implication of right wing dumb, left wing smart it's not good. It's not something that I can really. I don't like
really
that.
what I'm making. That's not the argument I'm making. I'm not. In fact, I would like that's not the argument at all.
I think that's more with. I think everybody kind of
sounds like. It is what it sounds like. Whether it's actually the argument you're intending to make, it's what it sounds like. If you said that to somebody who like voted for Trump in the last election, they would say, "Oh, so you think I'm a moron? Well, I think you're a bloody blah."
I'm talking mostly to a panel of. I mean, everybody here is a leftist, as far as I know, or at least liberal.
Sure, I understand that, but my point is
very different.
It's still. I still think that to some extent you did make the point that it's a thought-terminating cliche that the right depends on, and the left is this really diverse, incredibly good-thinking mass of folks. All of these different opinions they've arrived at because they've researched. If you think that the right wing doesn't research, they do research. They just research stuff that it's wrong. And I'm sorry.
I can defend the spirit of the thought terminating cliche.
Go ahead, Jangles.
Yeah, I can defend the concept of it because if you're a conservative, kind of by the nature of being a conservative, you're trying to maintain the status quo, and a thought terminating. Yeah, and a thought terminating cliche there is just maintaining the status quo, versus so like you're assisting with inertia when you're not thinking too hard about issues because you're like you're going to work and living your life, stuff like that. Stuff that we tend to do. But thought terminating cliches coming from the left are like abolish capitalism and stuff like that. Like. Yeah,
One could be better.
A ton of people having those, better, but a ton of people having those ideas. Well, it's not going to really affect change.
Sorry, can we let Dylan jump in? Dylan's been, I want Dylan.
Yeah, actually, I'm jumping in to say I got to leave.
Oh, okay, no worries. Sorry, we didn't get around to talking about your stuff, Dylan. Obviously,
it's okay, man. See you later, man.
Yeah, okay, catch you later.
See you then.
And it's not. I want to quickly state, it's not that I completely disagree with the point. It's that I do think that the viewpoint lends itself to a kind of a position that we're coming at these folks. Maybe I don't. Okay, so I have a lot of conservatives in my life because of my family, and the way I talk to them is not. I don't try to debunk them. I don't try to do any of that stuff. I try to present them with information that they may be interested in. I try to present them with, a version of something they may have heard or said that leads them in a different direction. I generally like, and I'm not saying that this is a viewpoint that you hold or in your interactions with conservative people necessarily engage in, but I try not to think of people in that way. I think that thinking of people as if they don't have a complex set of reasons for thinking the things that they think, I don't know that it's really productive personally.
Well, I'm not saying that it's not that they don't have their own motivations or not. I mean, I grew up right wing. I was right wing. I was indoctrinated. Sure. And I remember what I had to challenge and what it felt like to realize that I had basically had these assumptions essentially given to me and ground in and repeated and repeated and repeated from every single source in my life. And then, of course, the other part of that is that a lot of these structures also act very much on like social ostracization as well, where if you doubt the church, you get ousted, and you can't doubt them in anything because one thing is sign of apostasy. Like this is more extreme right-wing spaces, which do tend to follow religious examples. The most extreme right-wingers are almost always somehow tied to some form of extreme religious group. And this is, again, not to say that like the left has I think there are a lot of like people who are not good at advocating for the left. I think there are people who don't really have good justifications and whatnot. But I just think that the way that people tend to come to leftism and the types of ideas that are propagated on the left are significantly less emotionally manipulative than a lot of the ones that are used on the right. In fact, I mean, I often point to young Earth creationism, which is just like young Earth creationism requires you to refute all of known science. And it literally they lead to when you're in talking about evolution, they want you to doubt all of the science that has existed. All theories are no longer to be trusted. And so it's deeply conspiratorial, and these are hugely influential. The Christian lobby in the United States. It's not to say that they're that people are stupid. It's just that the way that the ideas propagate and are reinforced, we have to address these honestly. And my channel is one in which I welcome people from various perspectives. I speak my opinion very clearly. But I also challenge people to go hey, what are your assumptions that you're coming into here with? Because a lot of times, if you're coming from a very extreme right-wing background and you have these assumptions about all kinds of people, those have been ground in and reinforced from multiple sources. And those are hard to break, and they take time, in my opinion.
I do agree. I do agree with you on those points. Yes.
I just think it's worth to mention that there are right-wingers who aren't conservatives necessarily, right? Those are a subset of right-wingers. yeah, I mean, I don't know.
What
What would
do you
that
mean by
look
that?
like? Yeah.
Well, you're not trying to start.
that.
I'm not interested in the fucking donkey discourse, okay? Because I got hot takes on that.
No. I mean, depends on your definition of terms, right? I mean, I think for me, conservative is sort of a very specific sort of way. Like, conservative is like the opposite of progressive, right? And I think using left and right interchangeably with like progressive and conservative is a bit reductive, right? When I think of left,
are you talking about socially progressive, fiscally conservative people, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah,
like some right libertarians can have socially progressive views, but it's more the case of trans people can do what the fuck they want to themselves, rather than a genuine compassion for trans people.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think I'm just trying to point out. I mean, there's levels, right? There's like a
sure,
right?
sure,
and like, obviously, I'm coming here from like a fucking European perspective, right? But like in Denmark, like we have like a conservative party, right? Like we have a conservative party in parliament, and they're very much different than sort of the Liberal Party or like the People's Party, but they form like a coalition, right? But they have very different values and stuff that they fight for, right? And I do think that it's important to recognize, while the difference might not be as obvious in the US. But like globally, like all of us have global audiences, right? And there's a lot of people who come from different situations that might be right wing for like one or the other reason, but are very much susceptible to like some kinds of arguments. Specifically, I would say economic arguments, right? And analysis of like economic situations and sort of how society is structured. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I do agree that there are like center right positions, and those people have to be considered differently than when we're considering extremists who also probably take I mean, a lot of extreme right wingers end up going into some form of traditionalism, even if it's like the vague 4chan traditionalism that just talks about trad wives and stuff like that. It's like the cringe traditionalism, but like, I mean, it's like it's a fact. Like these economic positions are often used as gateways to pull people into the conservative social positions, like white supremacy and all this stuff like that. But yeah, no, of course there are absolutely like libertarian types who are like more like have more liberal social views, and I would think those people can be reached. But also those people do tend to seek out other viewpoints, whereas like extreme right wingers will not. It is literally against many of their viewpoints to seek out opposing viewpoints, and they only look to see their opponent humiliated. So I mean, we're kind of off the main point, but yeah.
We moved a bit far away from the main point. I guess maybe to bring it back around to platforming, we've spoken quite a bit at length about the whole platforming in specifics. But yeah, I mean, I guess Pete, I'll throw it over to you just to ask, like, more broadly, what's your perspective on sort of platforming, and do you think there's certain circumstances where it's just not worth kind of
Oh yeah, there's definitely like, as far as, I mean, I obviously decided it wasn't worth to do it myself, but I mean it was for reasons that were maybe not particularly savory on the part of the actors that forced it. But I mean, do I think that me talking to MILO YIANNOPOULOS is important enough to wreck my own life over? No, I don't. But I mean, that's a very localized, centralized thing. Do I think that, absolutely every single possible opportunity we should take? Not necessarily, but I do think that there's a perception of the left that A, we're incapable of debating these people, and B, incapable of, for lack of a better word, showing the courage to even try. Like, that was one of the angles I believe Milo tried to take with Jangles multiple times. Yeah, it's so great that you even bother, and it's very condescending and ridiculous. But it's something they've sort of trained their people to do, and it's not possible to do. I'd go ahead and refer to the Peterson and Zizek debate, where Peterson put up his straw man that he has for many years on Marxism, what Marxism is, what Marxists want, et cetera, and all Zizek did not even put up like a real like argument really against it. He just said, "Give me the names of some Marxists that think this," and he couldn't.
That's
he
so
couldn't
good.
do it, and it's not a particularly great argument or anything, but a lot of this stuff as you said, Demon Mama, it's predicated on lies. And as much as I do think that there is a necessary caution to take when going in. Again, I said my intent, I was going to spend probably at least some time every day researching MILO Yiannopoulos until this happened, which it still hasn't yet. So it would have been quite a while. And I do think that it presented an opportunity to push back against certain points that he makes that he just doesn't have an out for outside of, again, I mentioned it earlier, a lot of his go-tos are to simply to pivot to flattery or to attempt to change the subject, which, if you can manage to say, hey, I know what you're doing here, it disarms him. And again, I would point to Jangles' debate here as evidence of that. Like, you would not let him do those things, and he had nowhere to go from there. And I'm not saying like this would have made me come out looking incredible or anything, or even necessarily that the point is for me to look incredible or the left to look incredible. The point is to show, in my opinion, that this type of a thing, this guy that you've brought to your little conference here is not infallible. And a lot of them actually do think that these types, these dunking types who make, their points based on straw men and based on lies, they do think they're infallible. And a lot of the time, to rattle just the demeanor and B, the factual basis of what they're saying, it really undermines. And it's not necessarily that I think that the 100 or so people in this place would have necessarily taken that, but the video of the debate would get out there, and most likely, given the fact that people get very angry at me doing anything and give me a lot of attention doing that, the video itself, the full contextual video itself, would have gotten a lot of attention based on just the fact that I am generally looked at as someone who kicks up controversy, whether that's intentional or not.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I largely agree with the idea that agitation, like of like entrenched audiences, can be pretty valuable. It's I guess. Fuck my train of thought.
No, I was struggling there too, to be honest with you. I have attention deficit hyperactive disorder.
Me too.
So I kind of want to dig into this idea.
I know exactly where you're coming from. I sympathize though.
So I've been really struggling with like trying to define what exactly platforming is, right? But right now, so essentially where I'm at is that I think of platforming as any action which has the material effect of growing the follower or viewer base of a public figure. That's essentially how I look at it. Or at least in the sense that, like, once you get to that point, I have to wonder, and maybe people can entertain this line of thought. I'm wondering if there's like responsible and irresponsible forms of platforming. Like, if you can platform someone like MILO, yes, but it's like done responsibly. Because
before you get there, when you had that definition, I like it, but is that the intent or the outcome that you were talking about?
Oh, I mean, like, I suppose we're talking about outcome, right? We're looking at material effects. So okay, whatever. So, like, for example, if you go into a debate with someone and you go in with every intention of doing well, but you get absolutely fucking destroyed, I would say the intentions don't really matter. The effect is what matters more. So don't fucking fuck up, or else you're gonna, or else, yeah, exactly. So congratulations on not fucking up. You did a good thing, because if you did fuck up, I would. Like, it sucks, because then you would feel bad, and I would also be like, not mad at you, but like also I would have called that platforming. Oh shit!
Actually, sorry, Riley, you've been firing shots at everyone, right? I'm about to fucking fire a shot at you, so get ready, okay? Here it comes. I'm bringing the pain, right? So you recently platformed Calvin Garra, and cool a not particularly challenging discourse with them, right?
Oh fuck! This is actually a real shot. Okay, I gotta deal with this now.
Okay, and onwards from that, Calvin Garra has released a collaboration with Blair White, in which they effectively just spent, what was it? I don't know how long the video was. A significant period of time in this video.
I've seen it.
just bullying Milo Stewart, real 2016 fucking skeptic era vibes, right? So, you're sort of pointing out these other things, which is fair enough. I appreciate you doing it, but, I want you to take some responsibility for your own platforming and tell us a bit about that and, what's going on there.
Okay. All right. I have thought about this a lot. I've talked to the people, my close friends in my Discord. So essentially, here is my current take on this. Right now, it is hard for me to tell whether or not he is acting in good faith, right? This has been something that a lot of people have wondered about for a while, and I'm going to explain this a little bit. People might want to interrupt because I'm about to say some stuff that people could easily disagree with. This is just my understanding, all right? Based on my conversation with him, I am at least I am at least inclined to believe that he is acting in good faith and that he is representing what he authentically believes to be true, rather than just like grifting to a specific opinion in order to like appeal to a specific audience, right? Given that, and given that apparently he watched me and likes me, I am trying to take if we want to think about theories of punishment, I am trying to take a utilitarian approach to the situation rather than a retributivist one. What I am trying to do is, to the best of my ability, if I'm able to talk to him, because we haven't talked, like, this is private knowledge, but you put me on the spot, so I have to, congratulations, cat's out of the bag. The plan is to go onto his stream at some point this week, onto his channel, onto his main channel, and talk to him, all right? And I am going to try and use that opportunity and the good faith that exists between at least the two of us right now to try and persuade him. At least, I can make a lot of arguments, but what I'm going to essentially try and do is at least demonstrate to him the harm that his platform has caused, right? That's essentially what I want to go in and do. I want to go in, accomplish what I want to, and get the fuck out of there. Because, yeah, the video that he put out, not only was it very confusing to me, but it was disappointing. My suspicion is that he recorded it before we had our discussion and had it scheduled to go out because it was with Blair White. And I think that Blair lives in California. And I know he wasn't in California this past weekend because we were texting. Mm-hmm. We have actually exchanged numbers. So we are in that degree of communication. And he told me that he was in New York with his family. All right. Mm-hmm. So my suspicion is that he recorded that video and had it sent out before. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that he didn't maliciously, intentionally create this video after we had spoken. And again, this is assuming a lot. It is assuming a lot. So people can criticize me and say, Riley, you're assuming a lot. Yeah, I am. But I would rather do that and try and get a positive outcome than just do the same thing that everyone has done and criticize him, which at this point, in case people haven't seen, has gotten us nowhere. And I want to try and take a different approach. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, but I'm going to take the shot at least. That's basically my take.
Okay. Has anyone got anything to say to that?
Alvin Guerra has 376,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
Let's talk about platforming. When what impact was really going to have on Alvin Guerra?
And also the practical effect of what happened. The practical effect is that like his subscribers didn't increase. He didn't get any additional views. It probably caused more harm for him because he basically we got a couple great quotes, right? Like he affirmed the validity of non-binary people, just outright, out the bat. He affirmed that he believes that Ariel Scarcell is a TERF. And in a very, again, like this is the most confusing quote, but this is like something I've been struggling with. He said, yeah, I feel so sorry for Milo. He's gotten a lot of hate. Shout out to Milo. And and in the moment I was like, oh, that's awesome. And now I'm very conflicted about it because I don't know what to believe. Reality doesn't make any sense anymore. But
you know something really cool to come out of it. Someone who's like a fan of Calvin, and like tried to keep up with all the stuff he does. Like, oh, like Calvin's gonna talk to somebody. Ooh, he's gonna talk to Riley Grass Roshong. Yeah, let me check her out a little bit.
Yeah, like if anything, I was probably the one who was platformed more in that instance. Like I would make that argument. I think I would make that argument. Like, yes, was there some effect that a lot of people certainly got their hopes up only to have them kind of dashed the day after, or basically the day after when he released the next video? Yeah, like I'm not gonna try and hide the ball on that one. It was pretty much a shock to everyone, including myself. But essentially, like I basically elicited how I want to take this. I want to take advantage of the fact that we, amongst the two of us, have a good relationship so far, and I want to push that as far as I can because I fundamentally want to change minds on here. That's what I do.
I think
like not talking to people worked, right?
I think this is a really important point. That this was sort of the point that I've been trying to make at least like this whole time, right? That there are big positives to gain, especially if you're like a smaller content creator on the left, because you yourself can be platformed, right? You have a lot to gain if you make a good showing, and you can possibly like draw over like a percentage of their audience and grow your audience, and in the future like make more convincing arguments towards them, right? And like that's like a huge gain. Like that's what you should want as a leftist content creator, is make more people interested in the left. And
you don't have to win them over, you just have to interest them.
Yeah. Like understand, I'm not going to try and go like
it's like the Inception thing, right? You just have to like put the
they could find you incredibly insufferable and just like want to follow you from then, right?
If you
I can't
reverse platform.
Attention is currency in the marketplace of ideas.
There it is. There's the meme. There's the Peter Coffin meme. That's it. Now that is it's true, isn't it?
But that's essentially, I don't want to go like deeper into like my rationale or the basis why, because I don't want to like hold my hand too much before the thing actually happens. And I don't want to like make
your intentions. I think your intentions and reasoning make perfect sense. Like the scenario you set up personally, I think it makes sense for you to want to do what you're doing. I don't have a lot of questions for what you're doing.
Thank
personally.
you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I do want to say, just for the record, I do believe it's very possible for like right wingers and even like people who are demagogues to make a mistake and platform or legitimize a smaller figure on the left. I do believe that's possible. I'm not like a hardliner, don't talk to anybody. I mean, literally my content, half my content is debating with people. Like, obviously, like I do believe that there's validity in that. But it's just like, I think that when there's huge differentials in platform size and in platform efficacy and in how the platform is constructed, those things have to be taken really seriously by political commentators and political, Twitch streamers, anybody who's going to be in that place, and to be careful that it's not causing like a windfall of new followers or attention to somebody. That's all.
Like initially, like a lot of the people who initially platformed me were right wingers, right? Like somebody like Chud, exactly. Like I go on Chud's show all the time.
What are you talking about? Fuck off! This is bullshit.
That's funny.
Crypto Chud. Okay, listen. I just want to throw it over. We've got about 40 minutes left, I guess. So, well, hopefully we'll bring some fresh perspectives, maybe some fresh arguments, some fresh spice. Breakfast Detective, let me throw it over to you first.
Hey, sorry, go on.
No, please introduce yourself and then shill yourself, okay? And then give us your take on platforming.
Sure. I'm Breakfast Detective. I'm an ANCOM. I do like left praxis on Twitch. We'll be live tonight at 8. We're having an LGBTQIA panel this Saturday at 2 p.m. Dario is going to be there. We're still looking for folks, so feel free to reach out into the DMs. As far as platforming goes, I kind of inform my viewpoint from like work like Karl Popper's The Paradox of Tolerance. So a very easy line for us to draw is that we should not be tolerant of viewpoints that are intolerant, and that if those viewpoints gain tolerance would then disavow us of our humanity, whatever it may be. And the second point that I would just add on to that, because I think about platforming a lot, is we have to be careful that when we engage with these ideas that we're not legitimizing them by taking them as talking points that are worth discussion. So a couple examples, or at least one standout example that I can think of, is the Jewish question. I don't think we should ever engage in that sort of conversation at all, because I think by trying to debunk that, we legitimize it, and that we should have certain things that are just off the table. Like, I'm not willing to discuss things that are going to disavow people of their humanity, lives, or livelihoods. So I think like we can kind of frame or shape our perception of these things, at least around that.
Sorry, can I just you say we shouldn't engage you the Jewish question, because what did you say about the livelihood part? What was that bit?
Well, I mean, maybe I'm being a little bit facetious towards the end there, going on a little bit of a tirade.
No,
but
No, that's fine. Be facetious as you want. I'm all about that. But sorry, the reason I wanted to clarify that is like because I don't know. It feels like from what I did hear that maybe you could make the same argument against like debating trans issues, for example. Like, you know, because to debate the idea that trans people are X, Y, and Z, and if that's incorrect, is to legitimize that idea. Maybe I don't know.
I guess I would say if the scope of which we're debating these things are, you know, what is the extent to which social services should be used to support certain groups of people versus another? I'd say it's probably like a legitimate topic of conversation. But if we're erring into the territory of whether or not trans people exist, you know, then I think that that's an untenable conversation, and we shouldn't even engage that because it's illegitimate on its face.
Okay. And also, Mark's rejoined us. Mark, do you have any sort of thoughts or anything you want to kind of add at this point? Or?
I missed out on what was being talked about, so I'm trying to just re-enter to see how the conversation has gone since I left.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a weird one. Jangles, go ahead.
Sorry. Just to make sure I heard the last thing you said. So you said we like shouldn't debate people on whether or not trans people exist, which is obviously a position everyone here is taking a hard affirmative for, right?
I would hope so.
Obviously.
Yes, please.
Wait. I need to clarify what you mean. Like, so if somebody says like trans people don't exist, right? Like, should you not push back against that? Is that what's being said?
No. What I'm saying is you shouldn't debate it as if it's a legitimate talking point. Like if somebody says something dumb and, you know, you feel like dedicating the emotional time and energy to just being like, no, wrong, you know, then by all means. But whether or not we should platform this type of discussion for a larger audience is, I think, where I draw the line.
I disagree with that pretty hard.
I disagree with that.
I would say that would actually be very unhelpful towards the actual progression of trans issues.
Yeah.
I don't want to take this too personally, but that's like 50% of my debates.
Yeah.
Okay, now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with Jangles. I mean, yeah. I feel like this is like when, especially like the trans stuff, it's like some of the most easy arguments to make, right? Because there's just so much data on like the leftist viewpoint, right?
You know, some people who really agree with like we shouldn't even have this debate of whether or not trans people exist. Transphobes. They're pretty hard set in those beliefs. They're the ones who like, oh, I don't want to
But again,
this idiotic idea.
We're crossing wires here significantly. Like we're kind of lumping a lot of different things together. And what I'm talking about is we shouldn't have bad faith discussions on issues that pertain to people's lives and humanity. So I don't see the utility in debating someone like a TERF who's coming at this from a position of I'm not willing to acknowledge that person's humanity versus someone who's like, I don't know. Like I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I think that's a critical distinction.
I don't know. I'm gonna. I kind of want to push back against that because I mean, like, you know, there is a distinction. Actually, one of my largest debates on my channel at this point was against someone who, going in, I pretty much knew was not going to change his mind like at all, right? But it was great because effectively, whereas I wasn't so focused on trying to convince him, I was more focused on trying to convince the audience, right? By showing the audience how stupid his opinions were, right? I think that's something that you can't really do when you're talking to someone in good faith, because when you're talking to someone in good faith, like I do at least personally try my best to like be very cordial and respectable because like I know that they're legitimately trying, right? Like they're trying to understand what I'm saying and they're trying to reciprocate, right? So in that case, I do want to be like very cordial and respectable. But like when someone just doesn't give a fuck what I say and it's basically like I'm talking to a brick wall, well, I'm gonna make something out of that, damn it. They're wasting my time. I'm gonna get a good video out of it.
I agree, but I especially agree with the point where you said it's a waste of your time.
Well, I mean, like it's one of my top videos at this point. It's not a waste of my time.
It's actually like it's a waste of your time.
Here's a problem I have with what was said. Like it seems like you regard platforming as a thing an individual does, and in the case of owning, I'll be right out. In the case of owning a platform like a channel or something, yes, that is up to an individual who's making a decision. But for the most part, a platform isn't really. It's not just like let's say somebody who doesn't own a channel goes out and does something that gets recorded, and it's embarrassing for them or it's embarrassing for whatever group they're a part of, and that gets put out there. That's not them platforming a bad view. It's not them. Like, here's the thing. I feel like a lot of this was about like, personal decisions here, and platforming isn't necessarily simply about that. It's in a lot of cases power. Who has power in the situation? Who is institutionally connected in a situation? Who is disseminating views on say a mainstream platform or an alternative platform of a comparable size, for instance.
This is something I think is extremely important. Just like recognizing who has the power in the discussion, right? So like when you're arguing like trans issues with somebody who either doesn't understand or like is a turf or whatever, like you're coming like from the minority of the minority of the minority opinion, right? And there is such a power imbalance that if you don't fight, you'll get fucked by society, by everyone, right? So you have to take a stand somewhere. And like it's the same. Like if you're arguing from a very like minority side, it's super hard to just be like, yeah, I'm not even gonna take that argument, right? Because if nobody does, then the system is just gonna perpetuate itself.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
The one place where
exactly.
I stand by like
leave,
the
actually,
idea.
though. I do have to get going. I'm sorry, but I do have to leave.
Sure.
No
Thanks for
worries,
talking to Peter.
Yeah, this
It
is
was
great.
good.
Thanks
It
for
was
coming
very
on.
good meeting all of you. Actually, I thought this was a pretty productive conversation.
Great stuff. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks for coming.
I'll speak to you
Unfortunate
soon.
I wasn't here for most of it, but good meeting you.
That's all right. I'm sure we'll have some opportunity to speak at some point. You guys have a good night, everybody.
Fellow
All right,
Skater.
bye.
Thanks for coming
Later.
Poppin'.
Okay, what the fuck? What's going on here?
It's a great
Yeah,
question.
there was something I wanted to say just to kind of like, I don't know, maybe this will just add a different way of looking at it, but like I think there are certain argument types that are very hard to address head on. And honestly, I think maybe this is just a difference in the definition of like good faith or whatever, but there are certain things I will not engage in, like quote unquote good faith, because the question or the argument was not made in good faith in the first place. That doesn't mean I won't necessarily address it. One such example of this that isn't like just to change the topic to give a different example is like I mean, how many people have encountered the fucking vuvuzela like argument? They're like, oh, well, socialism would invent Venezuela. It's like, why don't they have stuff on their shelves? And like, or they're eating rats or whatever. And like stuff like that's not like a genuine question in my mind. Like it's a question that's designed to like to like poison the conversation in the first place and allow for easy pivots. So I will often address questions like that, but rarely ever with like the like what they're like a direct response, because they're basically sea lining. They're hoping, in a lot of times in my experience, is that type of question is meant to waste your time and get you angry and trigger you and blah blah blah. So what I will do is go, okay, do you actually care about the history of Venezuela, and are we going to actually talk about the history of a sovereign nation that's existed for a long time and all of the economic things that might go in there, or are you trying to say something else? And if you're trying to say something else, do you think you could provide another example that doesn't involve us having to jump to the history of a country that I don't like live in, that I don't like, I don't think either of us can claim to be experts on? And oftentimes you'll find out that the actual thing is they just don't like socialism, and then you can address that question in much better faith. And I think the same thing can go. I mean, it depends on the degree of the person in question, but people who are like extremely doubting of like the science on trans stuff, like I think you can address that in different ways, but sometimes it does require like refusing to meet them like on their ground, and instead resetting the ground and saying like, okay, you want to have this talk, here's how we talk about it, because the way that you've brought it in is not honest. And you don't obviously say that openly, but you can illustrate that to your audience. And I think that's often a way to handle those sort of issues, because it's like, yeah, because I do think there's a big mistake in like for example, I think that a lot of time could be wasted arguing with somebody about choose a conspiracy, QAnon, coronavirus denialism, blah blah blah. They could spend all day telling you, yeah, but what about the motorcycle that was a motorcycle death that was instead a coronavirus or whatever? And those are all just details that are ultimately designed to just sort of distract from the main point, which is that like, oh, like there's actually a problem at hand. And you can sometimes shortcut that by refusing to like engage in bad faith questions and instead reframing it with a good faith approach for your audience.
That's a great point.
I think I think when you're going to call somebody out on bad faith, and too many people do this, you better make sure that you are bulletproof in calling it out, because it seems like it's so used these days that people forget what it even means, and it just turns into thing I didn't like that you said. So that's one thing I'd like to call attention to, is be absolutely sure that you can demonstrate that they are knowingly providing a deception, that, or even, they're omitting details purposely to create the deception. Like, I think that's really important.
Oh, for sure.
But overall,
like, if Jangles
with
would
this
have fucked
discussion,
up,
like,
yeah.
I agree that there is no better disinfectant than sunlight. So debating those people, so long as you can come through really well, if you know your shit,
do not fuck up.
You'll be good,
So
that's a little close.
I need to push back on that just real quick. I don't mean to monopolize the conversation.
Okay, no, that's fine. Push back on that, but then I really want to move on to talk about Dylan. Because,
also, Vadim wants to know if he can come in if there's time.
Yeah. I'm putting Dylan in now. Yeah.
All right.
Of course, listen, I've always got time for Dylan Burns. All right. Dylan Burns.
Damn right.
Is back. Right, Breakfast Detective. I'll let you push back on that, and then I really want to talk. I really want to move the conversation on to talk about Dylan's situation too. Okay.
Definitely, yeah. I'll make it really quick.
Okay.
So I was looking at this the other day. For countries that have the highest indices of free speech, by various qualifications, right? The United States, I think, being in the top 3 or 4. We also rank the highest in science denialism, in like all kinds of conspiratorial and like anti-science beliefs that end up being very harmful and causing lots of harm. So I'm still kind of grappling with this. I don't have any good answers for this, but I think that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that sunlight is not the best evidence, and that colloquial wisdom probably applied more before the age of the internet. And now that this information is able to travel at light speed from people who are no longer authorities on these things, and there's no institutional gatekeeping on this information, all of a sudden, the less restrictions that we have on these things allow these harmful and non-true ideas to spread at light speed. So there's got to be another factor to this equation that's changing with the internet that we're just not appreciating. And I don't have it. I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay.
Can I push back on that a little bit?
Okay. I'm going to move Dylan into the middle of preparation. Final pushback, and then we'll move on.
Okay. So I totally get where you're coming from with that. Like, I'm not a free speech absolutist. I think there are some things that we do need to clamp down on. I think that there's, obviously we need to make sure that us as the electorate maintain its legitimacy. But I think there are some things that the government should stop people from saying. We already kind of do, as we all know. Can't yell fire in a crowded building sort of situation. But I definitely see the problem with it's not that they're all being exposed by the sunlight. They're all controlling different levels of sunlight. Like, they all got their own lights to evade the darkness, so to speak, that they're shining on these various things. So it gets very confusing when that happens. So I see that as being a problem, but that's why you do need the pushback. If the government isn't going to help us with this, if Facebook isn't going to go out there and actually do something to stop these misinformation campaigns, which that's where most of it comes from, then you need the debate bros or the people who are going to tackle it head on. Your Jangles, your H bombs, your ContraPoints, all those. You need them to step in, and
one of these things is not like the other.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the wide range of people that do generally exposure of the right. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. I think I also want to comment on this, just to say that.
Sorry, Riley. Sorry to cut you off. You're going to have plenty of chance to chip in next on the next bit. Okay. It's just I really want to move back to Dylan, because my intention was to speak about Jangles debating Milo, And then Peter Coffin came on, and we spoke about Peter debating Milo. It didn't happen. And I had this whole other thing I wanted to talk about, which was Dylan. Okay, so Dylan, how you doing? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just got back. I just testified in front of the city council. I think I made my point clear, pretty clear. And I streamed it too. So if anybody wants to go check that out, they can check the VOD.
What was this over?
Basically, it has to do with the fact of taxpayer money going to institutions that will not have gay adoptees. Basically, won't let people adopt gay people adopt kids, and taxpayer money going to that. And basically, the idea that that's a public service, it should be available to all of the public. And I went there and basically talked about the fact that us as a city, we should hop on this case because 2 trans people were executed last year in our county. Right? We've had mainstream political figures running for. We have political figures running for mayor who are outing public officials on the campaign trail, and we like to think of ourselves as this progressive city, but all this stuff is going on around us, and all these people talking like we just stay out of it. This is so controversial. We stay out of it. Honestly, to me, it's cowardly. And any city council member on there who honestly is going to vote against this should be primaried.
Boom.
Hell yeah.
Hey, chat. I want you to pay attention to what he just said. That's praxis right there.
Here you go.
Okay, so we have another surprise guest coming on in just a sec. So we're going to get stacked here in a second. Before Milo Yiannopoulos is here. Shit, I just got a raid from someone. I think who was that? Oh shit, I'm really important. Thanks very much for the raid, viewers. Stick around. We're talking about platforming. We've got some fucking celebs on the panel, and also Vadim, Creationist Cat, is coming on very shortly. So stick around for that. Now, Dylan, I'm going to throw over to you. Okay, outline this controversy that you face around your panel. Shoot.
So first, I will also say Vadim's going to be on Friday for Hippie Dippy Podcast at 8 p.m. EST, all about immigration.
Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him.
Dylan's panel's great. Okay,
double platform.
We're friendly competition. Dylan's crushing it at the moment. There's no denying that. But yeah, go and check out.
It's not even competition. You guys don't do the same night.
Well, yeah, no, if anything, we could help each other. But he's like, no, he constantly tries to undermine me. You see,
Chud's over here putting up the wall. Like, come on, building the wall like Trump.
Trade, you know. The golden arches of peace.
Look, I was okay. For fuck's sake, listen. Just fucking talk about your panel. You want to talk about your panel? I'm giving you a chance to, right?
I'm talking about my panel. I'm just talking the way I don't like.
Okay. What's this shit about the platforming then? What you've received some criticism? Tell your side of the story.
Very, very little criticism, but when it does come up, it's the idea that like, hey, Dylan, you should not be having people, right wingers, come on the show to debate left wingers because sometimes the left wingers lose, and that's the only criticism I faced so far is that sometimes the left doesn't look great. Maybe it's because sometimes it's the setup or a certain individual just has an off day or something like that. That's what it sounds like to me. Is that many on some occasions the right wingers present their ideas in a better fashion and end up looking better.
I mean,
I have some criticisms of what you're doing.
If you have other criticisms, I'd be taking those too.
Yeah. So my main concerns are that as far as I understand, I don't know much about these people, but as far as I understand, these are like pretty small creators. These are like 20, 30 viewer.
Some are small, yeah.
Would you say the majority or just kind of middle?
I would say the majority are 20 to 60. That's the range usually.
So they're just kind of getting their start on Twitch, really, aren't they? They're kind of maybe they've been doing it a while, but
some of them are like been doing it for a while, but they just don't do this full time.
Kind of breaking into it, and Twitch seems largely, as in terms of explicit politics, is a very left-leaning platform, yeah. And I'm concerned that you're potentially elevating the profiles of these like up and coming right wing figures for the sake of entertainment, and it's certainly entertaining. Everyone loves seeing the two sides. Oh, that's my voice. Butt heads against each other.
Wait. Sorry. Yeah.
You're really low.
Hello. I'm really low.
Oh, okay, wait, listen, this is chaos, okay? Let me take control, please. Right.
I understand. I just want to make sure that I have
you're good, Vadim.
Audio. Yeah,
you're absolutely fine. No, the point I was going to make is that everyone's trying to, chip in. Right, Vadim, if you mute yourself on Whereby, we're doing voice through Discord, okay?
Right, and is the voice coming in through Whereby right now?
Yes.
No.
People in the chat will have double. So mute your mic on whereby, and then you can talk, and we can all hear you. All right.
All right. All right.
Yes. There we go.
Are we good now?
We're good. I really want to hear your hot takes, Vadim. But first of all, I just want to continue with this route of the conversation, and then I'll throw it over to you to give your take. Okay?
Yeah. So that's basically all I had to say in regards to that. So like, what's your response to that, Dylan?
So my response to that would be: is I know that certain right wingers have used my platform to grow. I know that. That's undeniable. Suspect Sushi went on, and now he's on the Austin show, right? I mean, like that's a pretty he has grown, right? That is undeniable. But I would also say that I've seen a lot of the arguments in the first few weeks of the Hippy Dippy show. A lot of people would come on and they would genuinely not know how to interact with right wingers, because there's been so many panels that where you look around the room and the most left wing you could find somebody is a Bernie voter. I mean, the most right wing you could possibly find in the room is a Bernie voter. And I look at that situation, it's like, wow, it seems to be DSA panel after DSA panel after DSA panel. When these people go out into the world and they're, not fighting against Democrats or Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, and they're going to interact with people who are like right wingers, who are like Mike Pence type right wingers, how are they going to actually be able to interact with them? And what I found is a lot of people on Twitch genuinely don't know how to do that. When I put people against people like Sledge, who, even though a lot of people say Sledge is he's just ridiculous, he's crazy, or he's just like a brick wall. A lot of right wingers, and I would say a large chunk of right wingers, are just like Sledge and these other right wing people who I bring on, and people just don't know how to interact with them. And I think it's important to have a platform where the left can interact with them, even more so when the ruling party in this country is Donald Trump. When you are the opposition, you have to interact with the ruling party if you have any chance of eventually gaining power.
Yeah, I just kind of disagree with that. I don't think that some people on Twitch being able to speak to right wingers more convincingly is more important than maintaining our kind of dominance on this platform.
Thing is, I don't think
like if they want to talk to right wingers, they can just walk out the front door, right?
When it comes, well, not really. It's not that. I mean, I don't. When I walk out the front door, I'm not tapping people on the side of the shoulder and interacting with them. But also, if people want to go canvas or go and interact with people in their community, it's not like you go into your community, you just bumble around a lot, and then you come home and you're like, damn, well, that didn't go as well. You want to be able to go out there with those tools. And when it comes to the ideological dominance of the left on Twitch, that's pretty solid. I don't see any threat to that really happening. The biggest conservative creators on the platform don't even talk conservative politics. The biggest one I can think of that really does is Demon Machine, and most of the time he just works on cars, right? And he's like, what, a libertarian? When I'm bringing these people on, what I see is they do grow, right? It's undeniable they grow, but the way they're growing is they're not growing from, in the majority of these cases, from convincing people to their argument. It's that there's already conservative people on Twitch who they felt like users on Twitch who felt like their voices haven't been really put out there, and they found a home with somebody they haven't actually been able to interact with yet, because they don't see that on Twitch. There are conservatives on Twitch. We're never going to be able to expel them from the platform. I don't think I've really added to the amount of conservative viewers on Twitch. If anything, from all the polling I've done, it seems the majority of the time people go more to the left.
But there are a lot of very reactionary types in the kind of gaming streams. I mean, people who get tens of thousands of views, that audience is sitting on Twitch, potentially just waiting to shift over to more explicitly political videos. And if you're furthering the careers of these people, they could all just get funneled straight into these creators, right?
Are we talking about people like the Quartering, or people who
on Twitch? Not streamers who just have reactionaries in their audience.
Then we can talk about reactionaries in the audience. Those people exist there, right? And if we're going to be able to broaden our appeal throughout the rest of Twitch, because I don't think political Twitch has reached its top, right? Let's be honest. It hasn't. It's going to continue to grow. And as it continues to grow, I'm sorry, it's not going to be just 20 Hassans at the top of it. There's going to be right-wingers there, and we need to be prepared for that. And I think the idea... Yeah, Vadim, you wanted to...
I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt you. Why don't you finish your thought, and I'll jump in.
I think the idea that we have a place where we interact with these people, right? And from the majority of polling I have done during stream and post stream, most of the time, more people are convinced towards the left. But excluding that fact, I think having an environment where you can interact with right wingers where that doesn't currently exist on the platform, I think that's a positive thing.
I just want to say real quickly, I don't know, your Noopy. You said something to the effect of the importance of keeping our dominance on the Twitch platform, or I assume you mean most platforms in general, whereas I certainly am with you on that. I think it's important to recognize that there are ebbs and flows with sort of like the cultural zeitgeist. And naturally, there are going to be portions of time in which the left is more attractive to the majority of people and the right is. And to a very large extent, I think that the left is as popular as it is right now because we've had 4 years of a hell world with President Trump. And so all I'm saying is that to a certain extent, I don't think that those things can really be monitored successfully by a group of like the public is going to go where it's going to go. So I don't know. It's a minor point, but I wanted to get that out there.
I think partially like the one of the main reasons for like the kind of more left-leaning dominance is like, I think first of all, like some of the creators like Hassan and Destiny, and also like just generally the ethos of kind of the terms of service of Twitch seems to be a lot more progressive than platforms like YouTube. Like YouTube is so big that you just it took like so many news articles before they even dealt with like pedophilia. So like then they don't give a shit about like neo-Nazis. Like it has to take like such a high level of public outcry before YouTube takes any action against like anyone. Whereas on Twitch, like, you know, you flash your, well, I guess on YouTube they would get you for flashing your boobies as well. But you know, you say something a little bit too crazy on Twitch and you just get nuked. So I think there's a kind of an environment carved out which is kind of explicitly for us. And I feel like we should just kind of maintain that. Like, I don't see why we should have them kind of encroaching on us like that.
Right.
When they basically already have YouTube, like, and like a lot of other corners of the internet, it seems.
A lot of people don't realize that YouTube was not always the like right-wing bastion that it is. It was never, in my opinion, super duper lefty, but it was somewhat progressive. And at the very least, you could say that like centrist left politics were kind of dominant within the whole YouTube stratosphere. And I think it's only a matter of time. I mean, I don't want it to happen, but I think it's only a matter of time before because they're always several years late to the game, but once they get into the game, they play hard. And they're learning more and more ways. Like someone mentioned the quartering earlier. He's a very reactionary YouTuber, yet he codes all of his words. Like he never curses. He has special words to denote other things. Sometimes they're dog whistles, they're not always. I'm just saying that I think that they can find ways of infiltrating this space without kind of being so outlandish that they will get deplatformed, which I'm not necessarily against if their true intention is to like spread white nationalism or something. But I may be straying off topic, so I won't.
I mean, I agree with you that it's like, sure, it's a matter of time. Like, if Twitch is going to be around for another like 40 years, then of course, eventually, like conservatives are going to come on here and grow. But all I'm saying is, like, we should delay that. We shouldn't assist them in like elevating them. Like, you know, like if we sit on our hands and don't talk to them, don't platform them, like we could have a solid like 5-10 years of them not being here, as opposed to like just accelerating that process doesn't seem to be worthwhile.
Right.
Like, it's hard to. Hold on, one second.
I need to ask a very quick follow-up question. Just so I'm caught up.
Yeah, no. Come on. We don't want to let Vadim respond. Come on, Vadim. What are you
Sure.
No. It's just a follow-up question. And forgive me because I haven't been listening to the entire debate. or discussion. But is this specifically about Dylan and others like him bringing right-wingers onto their platform? Or are we talking about something further than that?
Right. So at this point, basically, because we spoke, I don't know if you're aware, Peter Coffin was here earlier. We spoke about Milo and Jangles' debate with Milo, and we've kind of moved the conversation on to talk about Dylan's specific platforming. I'm more than happy after discussing this for a bit to bring it around back to more broadly kind of platforming. Sure. Did you have a quick point to make or about something else?
I don't have another point to make in regards to what I was speaking about, but thank you.
No worries. Dylan, please respond, and then we'll throw it to someone else to push back on that. And
okay.
From there.
So when it comes to this idea that what we're doing is we're making these conservative creators that are going to come out and dominate. And I'm like, man, I love how Steve Shives is a 500,000 subscriber Andy, how Christina Summers has also dominated the platform on YouTube. When we look about how the right rose to prominence, it wasn't by just sitting in circle jerks and just talking forever about these things. That was part of it, that isolation that they made. But it was also spliced out with debates with people like Steve Shives or Christina I forget how to say her name. Summers.
Christy Winters.
Christy Winters. I was thinking of the wrong one. I don't remember. It's been so long since I've
Don't worry, it's all good.
Really.
But
there was a time when Steve Shives actually debated, but then he kind of said, fuck it.
And it didn't really, his debate, like he went away from that. But when you look at him, like those debates didn't like skyrocket people like him. And there were a lot of, at the time, a lot of like feminists, which they all lampooned. I mean, you can see a million old reaction videos of people like Baring reacting to like, look, crazy feminist number 492. But Crazy Feminist 492 never got big after that. If anything, all that happened is a lot of criticism was directed in their manner. And when we talk about the type of platform I've made, maybe once in a while you might get somebody who goes up, like Suspect Sushi is now at 500 Twitch followers. Ooh, man. And that's after going on to the Austin show, which has like a huge reach, much bigger than mine, even if mine gets to like 300 to at top 2,000 people live, right? So I don't think, I think if anything, I genuinely believe this would in long term would be more beneficial to the left actually reaching out further by showing the example of our ideas clashing with and hopefully dominating the rights, and me presenting an unbiased platform towards either faction for that to interact. It's not because I'm rigging it for the left. It's just that's how I genuinely believe the left at the end of the day will win out, because, you know, I'm left wing and I think the idea is better.
Okay, so I can see some hands up. So we're going to go Dario and then Mark and then Breakfast Detective. And then
actually about to bounce.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. No, do you want to say bye? So, sorry, we're at the end of our time. Over.
Last little thing, I was going to echo what Dylan said. I'm confident in our ability to win, even when our opponent shows up. So,
okay, that's brilliant. Right? Yeah, Jangles, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. If anyone else needs to go, we are at the time now, but I'm going to continue the stream because it seems to be still productive. So, shout yourself out, Jangles, show your content, and yeah.
Jangles Sciencelad, SJW debates on Twitter. Debated Milo a week ago. So,
okay, thanks.
I'm hungry for coming on.
No worries. Thanks so much. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, bud.
I like everybody here, so I was glad to talk to y'all. See ya.
Yeah, later.
Great to meet you.
I'm also gonna take off.
Okay, so going back to Daria, then what have you got to say?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to echo Dylan's point a little bit and sort of like go full circle back to what my initial argument at the start of all of this was, is that